Now that we've gained some insight into the nature of problematic gambling behavior, we can talk some more about how to detect such behaviors in a timely manner. I'm specifically talking about early detection algorithms. We know that the DOJ has been tasked by the Spanish government with implementing such an algorithm on a national scale. To discuss this topic further here, we have brought in two experts. Rasmus Kjaergaard, who is CEO of Mindway AI, and Maarten Haijer, who you've seen before, Secretary General of EGBA. The EGBA, of course, is currently closely involved in drawing up a pan-European standard on markers of harm for online gambling. My colleague Jeroen Laemers, editor of Gaming in the EU, will help guide the discussion. Please make to the stage, dear speakers. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Well, thank you, Rasmus and Maarten, for being here. As Willem said, you are definitely the experts on this topic. Maarten, you have been on stage earlier, so everyone knows who you are. But Rasmus, maybe you want to say one or two things about yourself.
Yes, of course. That would be quite easy. I'm Rasmus, and I'm the CEO of Mindway AI. For those of you who do not know us, we are a solution provider of AI-based detection, monitoring, intervention, decision-making support, where we combine AI algorithms with human experts, human psychologist assessments. Likely you have noticed that one of the experts where we have just heard that, as Annika is part of our team of experts, psychologists, doing assessment and giving us an invaluable foundation to try our utmost to build the most accurate detection solutions.
Okay. Well, Maarten, we know who you are, but maybe you can tell something about the project you're currently engaged in, the European standards of markers of harm for online gambling. So, are there any results? When can we expect them? Is this way too early to ask?
No, I think maybe just a very quick explainer of what the project is. It is the proposal that we made a few years ago to have a European-wide standard of markers of harm. These are the things that Annika also referred to, like chasing losses, deposits, time spent. So these are around, I think, 12 for the time being, markers of harm, where we propose this to the European Standardization Committee, which is also the committee that makes, if you have a CE mark in your sunglasses, how well it protects against the sunlight. That's the same committee drawing up those standards. So we propose to them to have a standard, and that has been the idea has been approved. So we're not participating to the actual discussions on the marker itself. But the idea is then to have a standard that can be used by regulators and by the industry, and by anyone, or the health sector as well, by anyone that's involved and interested for their work. The work has been going on for some time, but the working group drafting the markers of harm has finished its work, and it's now going through all kinds of administrative hoops. So then it goes to a technical committee and then needs to be voted on. So probably it will take another half year, if I'm not mistaken. That's what my colleague tells me. But then hopefully we will have something that will be published actually also in the official journal of the EU. So we'll also get a nice official stamp on it as well. But I think that's more or less the time, as I understand it, what we're looking at.
Okay. So actually the reason that I'm bringing this up, unless you wanted to add...
Yeah, I just wanted to add, my colleague says the same. We are involved in the project on the work group side, to bring in what we have in terms of our risk factors to bring to the table. Also views from the practical operational side, building, providing, deploying these systems with gambling operators in Europe in particular in this case. And of course for us it's also a matter of both bringing this to the greater good table in terms of standardizing markers of harm, but also be in the forefront once they are decided, and obviously we look forward to the stamp as well. And likely we have to celebrate that, Maarten, at one point that we will that we will achieve that in a couple of years.
Well, the reason that we're talking about standards of harm, I think here is because there is an algorithm coming, and these markers of harm are, of course, unless I'm severely mistaken, the input for such an algorithm. And speaking of that algorithm, it might be good to quote very briefly from a royal decree that was issued by the Spanish government last year in March. And it says, within a period of 2 years from the entry into force of this royal decree, the DGOJ will develop a mechanism for detecting risky behavior that will be used by all operators. So there is some sort of central, or at least centrally administered algorithm coming. It will apply to all operators, and it will probably be introduced in 2025. So that is why I think it is good to talk about algorithms. And we already heard from Annika earlier about signs of problematic gambling behavior. But I want to ask Rasmus if there is any, I mean, we've all listened to Annika, but from your perspective, what should a good problem gambling detection algorithm pick up? What are the things that, if an algorithm picks this up, then it's a good one?
Yeah, so first and foremost, referring to the markers of harm. So that's the whole, you could say, in my perspective, and normally also considered a perspective when you build such systems, that is the categorization. That is what we measure: loss chasing, tolerance, time of day, deposits, cancel withdrawals, all sorts of indicators, and they are called markers of harm. We call them in our system risk factors. They can have different names, but the bottom line is that it's a matter of how we, in the best possible way, want to clarify the picture of each and every gambler in the customer database. And on top of that, then it's a matter of building accurate models, because at the end of the day, AI is quite a buzzword these days. It wasn't 4 years ago when we started, let me say so. But on the other hand, AI and algorithms are still sophisticated computer programs, and they are not better than how they are developed. And we see that with ChatGPT as well.
Okay, but the things that Annika said, loss chasing, lose of control.
So the whole point in terms of why I'm saying this is actually that you can have as good as markers of harm as possible, but it's also a matter of how you train the model, what you say to the model it has to look out for. And the way we do it is to use Annika and her psychologist colleagues' assessment in building this to a very high accuracy. But if you are asking it to look out for changes in gambling behavior, you get a less accurate model. If you ask it to look out for people who have self-reported as problem gamblers, or completed a questionnaire, or doing self-exclusion, you get less accuracy. And that gives you more false negatives, which means you will not find all the people that actually early show signs of something that can evolve to a problem, or worse, even though people spun out of control. But less accuracy is also the other way around, false positives. That is problem people who looks like being problem gamblers who actually do not show signs of problem in the data.
So you need a good data set, and you need a good algorithm on top of that. That
exactly.
is what you're saying. Okay, so Maarten, very briefly, because we've gone over this, but if you look at the things that Rasmus said, okay, this is what we're looking for. If you look at the things that Annika said, do you recognize that? From your experience with your project on these markers of harm.
Well, the markers of harm, I think that they're just an element of detecting problem gambling. So I think that, leaving that aside, but I think our members already use algorithms in their detection systems, and sometimes there's several programs running. I think what for me is very clear, that this is where, as I said before, by the way, this is where the future of the industry has to be. because rather than having regulation externally, sometimes well-meant regulations put on the sector, we need to put something in place of that. So we need, as an industry, to take responsibility for our customers and make sure that early detection is possible, that those people are guided to better behavior or, if necessary, to help, so that you have more prevention and early detection, so that you don't get into don't get customers that are in trouble. I think for me that's the only way of making sure that the industry, and that's also why I think I plead for it so often, it's the only way that the industry has a viable future that is not overly restricted by government regulation. So I think there's also a business interest in making sure that this works, and can only be done, I think, with AI and with algorithms. So the skills, I think, is the key thing here.
Yeah, I want to latch on to what you said about keeping the industry viable, sustainable. So looking at Spain, there are really specific, well, not specific, but at least concrete plans for a national algorithm. So to me, that seems that maybe the regulator doesn't trust the industry to develop such algorithms itself or to apply them fairly. I mean, that lack of trust, is that warranted in any way? Is it reasonable? Just very briefly, it's not to sort of pointing fingers, but does the regulator have a point somewhere?
I mean, it's difficult to say what the regulator thinking is behind this system. That's difficult for me to guess. I think we're a very early stage of developing these models and developing policy and then having the proper reaction to it. So I don't think there can be much distrust because there's not much experience with this at all. And I don't think any regulator, not just the Spanish regulator, but any regulator has just very limited knowledge, and understandably so, of these systems and how it functions. So that there's distrust, I doubt. I think one of the reasons behind a central algorithm could be that you would take away any discrepancies between how company A determines what problem gambling is, how company B does it with the help of algorithms, and so that you avoid room for interpretation. I think that might be the thinking behind it, but I'm only second guessing, of course.
Well, maybe this isn't so much a lack of trust, but something else. But I do wonder, Rasmus, I think you're the person to address this point. Does a regulator have the expertise to develop an algorithm like this?
Well, I think that in many cases people are best at where they have their focus. We are a solution provider, so we will definitely not be a good regulator if that was possible, nor a good operator. The same goes with some of the solutions we see developed by operators have other levels, and I think it's a matter of how you can allocate resources and what is the objective. I think that one of the underlying drivers behind such an initiative like the Spanish one, which is not the only one we see in Europe. We have a lot of similar conversations both in Europe and North America actually about market-wide solutions, comes from a couple of things. First and foremost, maybe a reluctance from gambling operators, not at all a criticism, because I'm the CEO of a commercial company, so I definitely think that the most sensitive is our customers. They are the one paying our bills, after all, our Christmas gifts as well, to our children. But there is a reluctance to reach out earlier to customers. And that's in my opinion a little bit of a paradox, because not only we see it and we have customers where we have seen it, we have just not yet been able to prove it scientifically, but we see that we can make a difference for customers earlier. And actually that was also confirmed by what Annika just presented. But not only is it good for for preventing the customer spinning out of control in terms of RD, we also see that earlier reaching out to customers is actually also keeping the customer on a more sustainable level, keeping them in the customer database for longer. So I definitely think that's one of the issues that could have led to such a decision. Another one would be to own some of the background in such research themselves as a regulator. And the third one is definitely one we see frustration in other countries as well. So we have a customer scoring blood red 99. We score from a 0 to 100. The operator fulfilled the duty of care, closing the account after a care call. All is good. The problem is, if you do not have some sort of nationwide solution to handle it, the customer is then, let's say, calling or logging into the operator next door. Yeah, and that's some sort of those market-wide opportunities that such solutions could actually bring.
Well, actually, you're sort of taking the words out of my mouth, because assuming a regulator can pull it off, a national problem gambling detection algorithm, should we be happy with that? I mean, you already mentioned some advantages, but Maarten, do you have any insights?
About what? Sorry?
So assuming that there is such a thing as a national problem gambling detection algorithm, should we be happy with it? Or maybe that's not phrasing it quite right. What are the threats but also the opportunities of such an algorithm?
I mean, if it really helps in the sense of having very early detection of problem gambling behavior and early warning, I think that's the idea behind an algorithm. In that sense, it would be positive. But I find it, I mean, I don't see how central government can control an algorithm that would function in such a way. I think it has to be a very dynamic model. And there needs to be checks and balances, and needs to be experts looking at it. So I don't know whether the government is best placed to provide that solution in a dynamic way. But that's just my humble opinion on how, as you say, some entities are more practicalities, and I come back to my civil liberties issue as well. But it also, you have expertise in one area, but not in another area. And I think how I probably would see this discussion as well.
Yeah, but Rasmus, you were mentioning some advantages. You know, for instance, if you have one player that gets excluded by one operator, that same player may not be able to go directly to another operator, or perhaps if that player does, he or she is immediately detected. So there could be some advantages. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, and I also see a lot of disadvantages, because is a gambling regulator really in a position to attract and keep the needed, let's say, level of computer development capabilities to build such a solution? That's one thing. Keeping it up to speed is another thing, and that I can tell you for sure that's not an easy task necessarily.
What if someone else would develop that national algorithm?
Come again?
What if someone else would develop that national algorithm?
Well, yeah, but I think that another question in that regard is, of course, also what happens when the national algorithm then detects a customer in potentially problems? Who hold then the obligation to reach out? Because I have heard more than one operator thinking that if in another country, if a national algorithm or a national solution was in place by the regulators, shouldn't they then take upon them the intervention obligation? On the other hand, I still have to hear a regulator saying that's a good idea. So I think there's a lot of questions unanswered in that as well. Also, the whole idea of building a solution that is not necessarily based on on, let's say, some sort of scientific background and best practices in terms of how these things are measured is another question.
Okay. So you have practical experience with this, Rasmus. So I'm asking you, is it feasible that here in Spain we develop, or the Spanish regulator develops some sort of...
I'm also biased. A little bit. Well, of course it can be done.
Yeah.
We have done it. Other people have done it. But we are not running a regulation on the side, so we have done it, and it has taken us quite a lot of time. And I would guess that our colleagues doing the same would say exactly the same. And it's focus and dedication that is needed. So I would say it's a hard job.
I can imagine. Maarten, we have exactly 25 seconds. What are your final concluding thoughts?
To me, it's a bit of an abstract discussion because we don't know what the algorithm is, we don't know what the intentions are. But on the other hand, I think it is the right discussion to have. I think it's good that we talk about safer gambling, about algorithms, and that we enter this more dedicated, more personalized approach. And so from that sense, I think it's very good that we, after having more than 10 years of experience going to seminars and discussions, now we're talking about proper help and prevention with the help of algorithms. I think that's a big advantage and a big step forward. So in that sense, I think it's a really positive development.
I think that's a very nice concluding thought. Thank you very much. You too, Rasmus.